So topic for today, or for right now anyway. Maybe there'll be another topic today. But topic for now, ego. All right. So ego is, in terms of the Eastern attitudes of the path, it's the biggest obstacle, um, at least at a point. And me teaching the huge challenges and such to those who can take that kind of thing of Tantra, and the huge philosophical reaches and challenges for those who can take it of stuff like Advaita. Obviously, I get to rub up against a lot of working with around this thing called ego. So the first obvious categorization of ego, or the ego that I'm talking about, and possible confusion with the general cultural understanding of this word ego, I think I better clear that up. So a large part of the Western cultural understanding of this word ego comes from Freud and such thinkers. And ego in that context basically means being a dick, being uncaring, being immature, and incognizant of the law of karma and such things. That's how they apply at that level. So it's really about being an immature idiot. And that's the level at which Freud and so on are working with, because they're working as therapists to as retarded therapists to a retarded culture. If you want to get a bit more around my attitude on the cultural retardation, where it comes from, look up my other laptop talk on sexual retardation, I think is the title. Anyway, leaving that ego aside, the ego that Advaita teachers object to notice, acknowledge, is the ego of the doer, the ego of me being the source of action. And they'll tell you you are not the doer, and so on, and other helpful suggestions. The Buddhist end of things, the ego is more the same thing again, actually, the illusion of I, the illusion of me choosing, me doing, me deciding, me explaining, me doing all these things. And what it really is it is an aspect of the mind mechanism. Something evolved for just like feet and livers and things like that, and brains. It's part of that. And it's a necessary part of that, a very important part of that, and not just a human part. I think you'll find this part across quite a wide range of expressions of life. It's the part that explains. It's necessary to have an explainer at a certain level of mental functioning. I saw the lion heading down to the watering hole. I notice he tends to go down there in the evening. I think when I go fetch water, how about I do it in the morning, is what then arises. And the ego thinks it did all that. It explains. And those explanations, they're useful. They go into, they go into our being. They become part of our knowing. They become part of our explanations. But this function of explaining takes a big fat shortcut, an obvious laziness, when it explains everything in terms of itself. I noticed the lion goes there then. I chose to go at another time. Maybe. And maybe in a case that simple, maybe. But the basic power this part of mind has, this explainer has, this, when it gets out of hand, it becomes what's called ego in the East. That quality of ego has only one power. It can resist and constrict the arising, what truly is arising in you. If you notice, for example, that at some point you're having a difficult decision, you're having a tough time making a choice, you're struggling with it. If you look back on any choice you've struggled with, you can see the choice was made. It already happened. The period of struggle was the period of you adjusting to that choice being made. The period of you coming to some acceptable explanation, at which point you could hopefully relax and let the choice arise. And if it went the other way, or when it went the other way, was when that constriction in you, that resistance, this is the one power ego has, to resist the arising, resisting that arising, squeezing against it. And maybe the ego succeeded. And then the choice did not arise. The true choice in you did not arise. And you can then see how that plays in life. And this little dance of constriction against the arising is ultimately huge, the core, perhaps the very essence of the spiritual quest, is catching this little ego thing at play, catching its explanations, and catching its urge to constrict, to resist the arising, to resist your will coming through. These are not easy things to learn, to experience. That's why I take a lot of time with many students of mine, helping them to notice these things. But you can notice so much just in yourself, just questioning your own explanations and being willing perhaps to look at a difficulty you're having and see if there's a possibility to relax and if there's a clear choice arising. Not a clear fear, a clear choice. You could start with looking for an explanation, see what your ego has to say about you, about why you chose to watch this little talk, for example. Good luck.